The icy wind howled through the jagged peaks of the Himalayas, carrying with it an ancient secret, a name murmured for thousands of years, Shambhala. Hidden deep within sacred Tibetan manuscripts and Buddhist prophecies, it was described as a kingdom untouched by time, a place where humans could transcend mortality and step into a parallel realm. For centuries, explorers, monks, and secret societies had searched for it, yet no one had returned with proof. Some called it a myth, others a divine sanctuary, and a few believed it was not of this earth at all. Dr. Arya Menon, an archaeologist specializing in lost civilizations, had spent her entire career chasing legends. She never expected that one cryptic letter would change her life forever. The letter arrived sealed in a black wax sigil, bearing an emblem she had only seen once before, an ancient Kalachakra mandala carved inside a 12th-century Tibetan monastery. Inside was a single line, handwritten in faded ink. "When the three rivers meet, the gate shall open." Alongside the note was a fragment of an ancient map, showing the eastern ranges of the Himalayas, marked with a small golden symbol resembling an 8-petaled lotus. At first, Arya dismissed it as another hoax. But the handwriting, it matched the notes of Professor Victor Kaldor, a brilliant researcher who vanished 2 years ago while searching for Shambhala. Determined to uncover the truth, she packed her gear and flew to Lhasa, the heart of Tibetan Buddhism, where she hoped to trace the origins of the mysterious map. In the ancient library of the Jokhang Monastery, Arya met Lama Tenzin, a monk known for guarding rare manuscripts. His piercing gaze studied her as she presented the map fragment. "You shouldn't be here," he whispered. "Those who seek Shambhala without permission never return." "But I'm not here for glory," Arya insisted. "I believe this map belonged to Professor Kaldor. He was searching for the truth, maybe he found something." Lama Tenzin hesitated, then motioned her to follow. Down a spiraling staircase lit only by butter lamps, they entered a secret chamber lined with scrolls hundreds of years old. He unrolled one of the forbidden manuscripts, its ink faded but intact. It depicted the Kalachakra prophecy, the key to understanding Shambhala. "According to this," he said softly, "Shambhala is not merely a lost city. It is a gateway, a hidden corridor between worlds. It exists, but not entirely in our dimension." Arya frowned. "Are you saying Shambhala is in a parallel reality?" Tenzin nodded gravely. "Our world touches others in places where energy flows strongest. Shambhala lies where these pathways cross. But the gateway does not open for all, only those who are chosen." That night, Arya wandered through the quiet streets of Lhasa, her mind spinning. If the monk was right, this wasn't just archaeology anymore, it was something far greater. She returned to her guesthouse and spread the map fragments across the wooden table. After hours of cross-referencing Tibetan cartography, she noticed something strange, the lotus symbol perfectly aligned with a convergence of 3 rivers deep in the Himalayas. Her breath caught. The note's cryptic message, "When the 3 rivers meet, the gate shall open," finally made sense. But she wasn't alone in her search. Across the valley, inside a dimly lit war room beneath a private monastery, an ancient order known as the Custodians of the Threshold had been tracking Arya since her arrival. They had guarded Shambhala's secret for centuries, ensuring no outsider disturbed the balance between worlds. Their leader, a mysterious figure known only as the Keeper, watched her movements on a glowing digital map. "She's close," he said in a cold voice. "We can't let her reach the gateway." 3 days later, Arya set out for the mountains with a small expedition team, her Tibetan guide Nawang, a drone operator named Ethan, and a linguist, Dr. Ria Malik. Their destination, the exact point where the 3 rivers converged. The journey was brutal. Thin air burned their lungs, glaciers cracked beneath their boots, and avalanches roared in the distance. But as they climbed higher, Arya began noticing something impossible. Compasses spun wildly. GPS signals failed. And at night, strange pulses of light rippled across the sky, illuminating the frozen peaks like ghostly auroras. "Natural phenomena," Ethan muttered, but his voice lacked conviction. By the 4th night, they reached an ancient monastery carved directly into the cliffs. Inside, murals depicted strange figures descending from the heavens, bearing spherical devices radiating light. Ria traced the carvings with trembling fingers. "This looks alien," she whispered. Nawang shook his head. "Not alien. The monks say these are the Shining Ones, beings who came from Shambhala to guide humanity thousands of years ago." Arya stared at the symbols, her heart pounding. Could this be evidence that Shambhala wasn't just a city, but a higher civilization? Outside, the wind howled louder, carrying whispers that almost sounded human. And far above them, hidden by the swirling mist, a pair of watchful eyes followed their every move. Because they were not the first to find this path. And they would not be the last. The higher they climbed into the Himalayan wilderness, the stronger the strange energy became. By the 6th day, Arya and her team had entered a region untouched by modern maps, an expanse of glacial valleys where towering peaks pierced the clouds like jagged spears. The path was treacherous. Ice cracked under their boots, and blinding snowstorms forced them to halt every few hours. But Arya felt something pulling her forward, as though an invisible thread was guiding her toward a destiny she could neither escape nor fully understand. At dawn on the 7th day, Nawang pointed ahead. There, he whispered, breath misting in the icy air. The three rivers' convergence. Before them lay a vast frozen basin where three mighty rivers met in a swirling vortex of white water, even in sub-zero temperatures. The sound was deafening, like the roar of an ancient beast. Arya unfolded the map fragment and compared it to the terrain. The lotus symbol matched perfectly. This was the place. As the team set up camp on a rocky ledge overlooking the convergence, Ethan launched a drone to scan the area. But within minutes, the feed went dark. Signals gone, he muttered. GPS 2. Rhea frowned. It's like we're inside an electromagnetic bubble. Before Arya could respond, Nawang dropped to his knees and began chanting softly under his breath, pressing his forehead to the ground. Nawang, she asked gently. He looked up, fear flickering in his eyes. The gateway is near. The spirits are awake. That night, as the team huddled around a small fire, the mountain silence was broken by distant chanting, deep, resonant voices carried on the wind. Arya froze, straining to listen. There's no monastery for miles, Rhea whispered. Ethan grabbed his thermal scope and scanned the valley below. No people, no heat signatures, nothing. But the chanting grew louder, surrounding them like an echo from another dimension. Just before dawn, Arya awoke to a strange blue glow spilling across the snow outside the tent. Heart pounding, she stepped out into the icy darkness. There, at the exact center where the three rivers merged, a pillar of light rose from the water, spiraling upward like liquid fire. The others stumbled out, speechless at the sight. It's beautiful, Rhea whispered. Nawang shook his head. Not beautiful. Dangerous. Arya raised her camera, but before she could take a picture, the light vanished, as though it had never been there. This is impossible, Ethan muttered. There's no logical explanation for what we just saw. But Arya wasn't convinced it was random. Something, or someone, was controlling the phenomenon. The next morning, they discovered they weren't alone. On a nearby ridge, a figure cloaked in black stood motionless, watching them through the swirling snow. When Arya called out, the figure vanished instantly, almost as if the mountain swallowed him whole. This doesn't feel right, Rhea said nervously. Arya knew exactly who they were dealing with, the custodians of the threshold. Lama Tenzin had warned her about them, an ancient secret order sworn to protect the location of Shambhala at any cost. Sure enough, by midday, they found strange symbols carved into nearby rocks, concentric circles marked with a cross inside. Nawang paled at the sight. The custodians, he whispered. They know we are here. That evening, the team followed the map deeper into the valley. Snow crunched under their boots as they reached a hidden ravine. Inside its shadowed walls, they found something extraordinary. A massive stone gate carved into the mountainside, half buried in ice. The structure was covered in intricate mandala-like patterns and ancient Sanskrit inscriptions glowing faintly in the fading light. Rhea traced the carvings carefully. This isn't just a doorway, she said softly. It's a key. Arya stepped forward, running her fingers over the symbols. The air vibrated beneath her touch, and a low hum filled the ravine. Suddenly, the ground trembled. Snow cascaded from the cliffs, and somewhere deep inside the mountain, a mechanism rumbled to life. Ethan stumbled back, wide-eyed. What the hell is happening? Before anyone could answer, a deep, resonant voice echoed all around them, though there was no one there. You were not summoned. Leave, before the threshold consumes you. The voice faded as quickly as it had come, leaving an oppressive silence behind. Arya's heart pounded, but she stepped closer to the gate. This is it, she whispered. The entrance to Shambhala. Nawang grabbed her arm. We must not cross without permission. The texts say those unworthy will be erased, not killed, erased. But Arya couldn't turn back now. Everything in her life had led to this moment. She placed the map fragment into a small recess on the stone gate. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, a ring of ancient symbols ignited with blinding golden light, spinning in perfect harmony. The mountain vibrated beneath their feet, and the gate began to shift open, revealing a narrow passage descending into darkness. Rhea gasped. We found it." But before they could enter, a distant roar split the air. From the shadows of the ridge above, figures in black robes emerged, their faces hidden, moving with unnerving speed. "The custodians," Nawang hissed. "They're here." Arya turned to her team, adrenaline surging. "We have one chance to make it through that gate. Move." They sprinted toward the passage as the custodians closed in, their chants echoing through the valley. Arya felt the temperature plummet, and a strange pressure built in her chest, as though the very air resisted their presence. Behind her, Ethan glanced back, and froze. "Arya, they're not touching the ground." The custodians were floating, gliding silently over the snow as if gravity no longer applied. With seconds to spare, the team slipped inside the passage just as the stone gate sealed shut, cutting them off from the outside world. Inside, a dim golden glow illuminated the walls, revealing carvings of celestial beings holding strange orbs of light. The air was warmer, charged with an energy that made their skin tingle. "This isn't a cave," Rhea whispered, awe in her voice. "It's a corridor." Arya stepped forward, heart racing. Somewhere ahead, beyond this tunnel, lay the gateway to Shambhala. But if the custodians were willing to kill, or erase, to protect it, what waited for them on the other side might be far more dangerous. For a moment, silence filled the passageway, broken only by the sound of their own uneven breathing. The heavy stone gate had sealed behind them, cutting off all light from the outside world. The air was warmer here, carrying a faint metallic tang, as though they had stepped into a place untouched for centuries. Arya reached for her flashlight, but as she flicked it on, the walls lit up on their own, glowing with faint golden veins that pulsed gently, like the heartbeat of the mountain itself. "Okay," Ethan muttered nervously, sweeping his hand along the glowing rock. "That's not normal." Nawang whispered a mantra under his breath, his voice trembling. "This place is alive," he said softly. "It watches us." The passage widened into a cylindrical chamber carved with strange spiraling patterns that seemed to shift and realign as they moved. Rhea ran her fingers over the carvings, tracing an unfamiliar symbol resembling two intersecting worlds. "This isn't Tibetan," she murmured. "I've studied ancient Himalayan scripts, and this predates them all." Arya stepped closer to the wall and touched the symbol. At her touch, the room trembled softly, and suddenly, a low hum reverberated through the chamber. From somewhere deep within the mountain, a sound rose, a frequency too low to be natural, almost mechanical, like an engine awakening after millennia of silence. They pressed forward, descending through a winding corridor lined with obsidian-like tiles that shimmered faintly under their feet. As they walked, the floor began to slope downward at a sharp angle, and the hum grew louder. At the bottom, they emerged into a vast, cathedral-like hall. A ceiling of crystal arches glimmered above, refracting golden light across the chamber. At the center stood a giant monolith carved from an unknown stone, covered in intricate patterns that spiraled infinitely inward. Ethan exhaled sharply. "This isn't natural. This is engineered." Nawang dropped to his knees, his hands trembling as he whispered a prayer. "This is the threshold stone," he said. "The texts speak of it, the key that separates our world from theirs." Rhea frowned, puzzled. "Whose world?" Nawang hesitated, then looked up at Arya with wide, fearful eyes. "The people of Agartha, the hidden realm beneath." Arya approached the monolith cautiously, her fingertips grazing its smooth surface. It was warm to the touch, almost alive, and as soon as she made contact, the carvings lit up with a burst of golden light. The chamber came alive. The walls rippled like liquid, and a sudden rush of air swept through the hall, carrying a whisper, not in one voice, but in thousands, layered over one another, speaking in a language no one could recognize. Rhea stepped back, alarmed. "Arya, what did you do?" Before Arya could answer, the floor beneath them shifted, revealing a spiral staircase descending deeper into the earth. "Down there," Arya said, pointing toward the glowing steps. "That's where the gateway is." Nawang grabbed her arm. "No. If we descend without the invocation ritual, the guardians will awaken. Ethan scoffed. Guardians? Really? Nawang turned to him, his face pale and stern. You have no idea what you are mocking. This place is older than humanity itself. Against Nawang's protests, the team descended the spiral staircase. The air grew thicker and warmer, and an inexplicable pressure pressed against their skulls, making their ears ring. At the bottom, they found themselves in another chamber, smaller, circular, and unlike anything they'd seen so far. In the center floated a perfectly spherical orb, suspended mid-air, rotating slowly, emitting a faint golden glow. Rhea approached it cautiously, her breath quickening. This isn't stone, she whispered. It's some kind of energy construct. Arya stepped closer. The orb seemed to react to her presence, glowing brighter and spinning faster. Suddenly, the room shook violently, and streaks of blue-white light erupted from the orb, striking the walls and forming a shimmering gateway, an elliptical veil of swirling patterns, like a liquid mirror suspended in midair. They all froze, speechless. Nawang collapsed to his knees. The Sangye Dwur, he whispered reverently. The passage of the enlightened. Ethan's voice trembled as he stared at the swirling portal. Are you telling me this leads to another world? Nawang nodded slowly. Not another world, another plane of existence. A parallel reality, hidden from ours, protected for thousands of years. Ray's analytical mind fought against the impossible sight before her. But if that's true, why would anyone hide it? Nawang turned his gaze toward the orb, his voice barely a whisper. Because not everyone who crosses, returns the same. Arya stepped closer to the veil. The energy pulsed like a living heartbeat, resonating with hers. She felt her mind flood with images she couldn't comprehend, towering crystal cities, vast floating gardens, beings of light moving through endless tunnels of stars. For a moment, it felt as though the veil recognized her. Suddenly, the golden light began to flicker violently. The orb dimmed, and the room's hum shifted into a deep, rumbling growl. Nawang's face turned ashen. We stayed too long, he whispered. We woke them. From the shadows above, figures emerged, tall, hooded beings with translucent skin and eyes that burned like white fire. They moved without sound, descending slowly until they surrounded the chamber. Ethan's hand reached instinctively for his knife, but Nawang held him back. Do not fight, he warned sharply. If you resist, they will unmake you. One of the beings stepped forward, extending a long, elegant hand toward Arya. When it spoke, its voice was neither male nor female but resonated directly inside their minds. You carry the key, daughter of Terra. The threshold recognizes your bloodline. Arya staggered back, stunned. My bloodline. The being inclined its head slightly. You are of the line of Kalachakra, the Time Guardians. Your arrival was foretold. The rest of the team exchanged bewildered glances, but before Arya could demand answers, the portal behind her roared to life, growing brighter and more unstable. The being gestured toward it. Choose now. Enter and awaken your memory, or leave and forget you were ever here. Arya looked at Rhea, then Ethan, then Nawang. If I cross, what happens? Nawang shook his head, fear etched across his face. Once you enter, you are no longer bound to this world. You may never return. Arya took a deep breath, feeling the weight of a decision that could change everything. She stepped toward the veil, the energy licking at her skin like static fire. For a moment, she hesitated, and then the ground shook violently, a deafening roar echoing from deep within the mountain. Ethan shouted, "Something's collapsing." The beings turned sharply toward the sound. One of them spoke, its voice like thunder inside their minds. The custodians have breached the outer gate. The balance is failing. Suddenly, the portal flared, blinding them with a burst of light. The hooded beings raised their hands, weaving strange symbols in the air. Arya looked back one last time at her team, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. If we don't go now, everything we've seen will be buried forever. And with that, she stepped into the veil. For a split second, the world dissolved into pure white light. Her body felt weightless, her mind stretched into infinity, and the voices of 1,000 civilizations whispered her name. Then, silence. When she opened her eyes, she was standing in a place that defied all understanding. Towering crystal spires floated in midair, rivers of light flowed upward into a sky filled with two suns, and beings of luminous energy glided effortlessly across a shimmering landscape. Arya had crossed into Shambhala. But behind her, in the collapsing chamber, Ethan, Rhea, and Nawang were trapped, and the custodians were closing in fast. Arya stood motionless, her breath catching in her throat as she took in the impossible landscape. Shambhala stretched endlessly before her, a realm untouched by time, where crystal spires floated weightlessly, suspended between rivers of light that defied gravity. The sky was alive, swirling with auroras of gold and silver beneath two radiant suns, and in the distance, massive circular structures hovered silently, connected by shimmering energy bridges. But this wasn't just a city. It felt conscious. The air thrummed faintly, vibrating with a subtle frequency that resonated deep within her chest, as though the entire realm itself was alive. Behind her, the portal still shimmered faintly, and beyond it came the muffled rumble of collapsing stone. Ethan, Rhea, and Nawang stumbled through moments later, their faces pale and drenched with sweat. Ethan gasped as he looked around, his voice breaking. This can't be real." Nawang dropped to his knees, his eyes welling with tears. "We are standing in the land of the enlightened," he whispered reverently. "Shambhala exists." Suddenly, a figure appeared before them, tall, radiant, and unlike anything they had ever seen. Its body seemed woven from pure light, its features shifting and translucent, and yet its presence carried undeniable authority. "You are not the first to seek this place," the being spoke, though its voice was not heard but felt, resonating inside their minds. "But you are the first of your kind to be invited." Arya stepped forward cautiously. "Who are you?" The being inclined its head. "I am Varen, one of the keepers of the threshold. We maintain the balance between your world and ours." Rhea glanced at Arya nervously. "If this is real, then why was it hidden? Why seal it away for thousands of years?" Varen's luminous eyes shifted, glowing brighter. "Because knowledge without wisdom destroys. Your world has forgotten the balance. You seek power, but Shambhala's secrets would unmake everything you know." Varen extended a hand, and suddenly, the landscape around them shifted, transforming into a holographic tapestry of time, visions spiraling outward like infinite mirrors. They saw ancient empires rising and falling in rapid succession. They watched as civilizations older than recorded history flourished in peace before disappearing without trace. And then, they saw something else, a war, not fought with weapons, but with light itself, between beings of staggering power. Varen's voice echoed through their minds. "Long before your recorded time, Earth was connected to many realms, including ours. But humanity was young, unprepared to wield what we had built together. When greed corrupted the balance, the gates were closed, and Shambhala was hidden to protect what remains." Ethan frowned, his skepticism wavering. "So you're saying Shambhala isn't just a city, it's a sanctuary?" "Not just a sanctuary," Varen corrected softly. "Shambhala is a memory of what humanity was meant to become." As they walked deeper into the city, other beings emerged, each glowing faintly, their forms shifting between human and luminous states. Some carried objects resembling crystalline tablets that emitted streams of living symbols, while others guided energy across invisible channels in the air. Nawang whispered reverently, "The text spoke of this, that Shambhala is half material, half consciousness. These beings exist between dimensions." But before Arya could respond, Varen stopped and turned sharply toward the horizon. The skies began to ripple like disturbed water, and a dark vortex formed above one of the floating spires. "The custodians have breached the threshold," Varen said grimly. "They are here." Arya tensed. "Custodians?" Rhea frowned. "I thought you were the ones keeping balance." Varen's expression darkened, his light dimming slightly. "We are. But the custodians, they are different. They were once like us, but they chose isolation, believing that humanity must never touch this knowledge. To them, your presence here is a threat to all realities." Almost on cue, shapes emerged from the vortex, tall, obsidian-like figures clad in armor that seemed woven from shadow and light. Their faces were hidden behind angular masks, and their movements were sharp, precise, and silent. "They will try to collapse the gate permanently," Varen warned, his voice vibrating like a low thunder. "If they succeed, your world will be cut off, forever." The team followed Varen across a massive causeway suspended over an endless abyss of glowing mist. Arya struggled to keep pace, her heart pounding as fragments of floating architecture drifted lazily around them like islands in a dream. Finally, they reached a towering citadel carved from pure crystal, its surface shifting with iridescent patterns that pulsed with energy. At the center of the citadel was a massive sphere of liquid light, contained within a lattice of ancient runes. This is the core of Shambhala, Varen explained, placing his hand against the sphere. It sustains the veil between our realities. If the custodians breach this chamber, your world will fracture. Before anyone could respond, the chamber shook violently as the dark figures descended through the ceiling like shadows spilling through cracks in reality. One of the custodians stepped forward, its voice deep and distorted. "Return the key, bloodline bearer, or all worlds will burn." Arya instinctively stepped back, but the orb of light at the center of the chamber flared brightly, reacting to her presence. Varen turned sharply. "You are the key, Arya. The orb recognizes your lineage. You must activate the seal before they reach the core." Ethan grabbed her arm. "Arya, wait. We don't even know what that will do." Arya looked at him, her voice steady despite the chaos. "If we don't, we lose everything." She placed her hands on the orb. Instantly, streams of energy surged up her arms, and the chamber was flooded with spiraling waves of golden light. Symbols began to lift off the floor, spinning around her in perfect synchrony. The custodians roared, advancing, but Varen raised his hand and unleashed a wave of force that threw them back. "Focus," he commanded. "The seal must awaken completely." Arya felt her mind expand, fragments of forgotten memories flooding back, visions of ancient councils, beings of light teaching humanity, and her own ancestors standing where she stood now, acting as the link between worlds. Suddenly, the orb pulsed one final time, and a blinding shockwave erupted outward, freezing the custodians mid-motion. The vortex above them shattered, and the oppressive hum that had filled the air vanished. When the light faded, the beings of Shambhala stood silent, watching her with an expression that was almost reverent. Varen stepped forward, bowing his head. "It is done. The seal has been restored." Arya staggered back, exhausted. "So, that's it. It's over." Varen shook his head slowly. "No, daughter of Terra. This is only the beginning. You have awakened the bond, but with it comes responsibility." He gestured to the city beyond, its crystalline towers glowing brighter than before. "Shambhala is not a myth. It is a promise. One day, when your world is ready, the gates will open permanently, and humanity will ascend to its rightful place among the stars." Rhea stared at the horizon, awestruck. "So, we've been given a second chance." "Yes," Varen replied softly. "But the choice will always be yours." As the portal back to Earth reopened behind them, Arya glanced one last time at the impossible realm, its twin suns blazing in silent majesty. She knew this was only the start of a much greater journey. And somewhere, deep within Shambhala, unseen forces stirred, forces that had been waiting for her arrival.